You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt Migaki, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope everything is fine and splendid and awesome wherever this audio file may have found your ears. Got a couple things to get into before we get into today's show, and one of them is free pedals. You like free pedals or free guitar gear or just, who knows what it might be? Well, I've talked about this a few times, but if you are playing along on the Tone Mob newsletter, then you already know all about it. Once a month, I send out an email with a trivia question about something that was talked about at some point in the month on the podcast, and the first person to respond to that email with the correct answer to that trivia question gets themselves whatever that piece of gear might be that week. I mean, it could be anything. It's going to be something guitar related, but it could be pedals, could be a slide, could be strings, could be, who knows. It's kind of whatever I stumble across that I think works for a good prize. So you just got to go to tonemob.com, and there's a little tab that says join the mob. You put in your information there, and boom, you're entered. And then all you have to do is what you're doing right now. Listen to the podcast and check your email, because they come in at random times. So you never know. Most of the time, it's going to be just a weekly episode announcement. So in case you missed it, that's just a little reminder. And maybe a few updates with some of the goings-on in Tone Mob land. But other than that, I'm not selling these email addresses. I'm not doing anything with them other than updating you with stuff that you're going to want to hear about. So that's where you go to check all that stuff out. I also need to tell you about Gun Street Wiring Shop. Gun Street Wiring Shop out of Bend, Oregon. It's where you go for custom wiring harnesses. Yes, they can make you the harness of your dreams. So whatever maybe you've been just looking at that old tired Stratocaster in the corner and you were just wishing that maybe you could squeeze some crazier sounds out of it. Well, you can do that with the wiring harness upgrade. You can change it back to, old school. You can make it weird. You can do whatever. All you have to do is go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and shoot Sean an email. He's going to fix you up. He knows exactly what you need. He's always down to do crazy custom stuff that really, honestly, I don't think anybody else really does. So make sure you check out Gun Street Wiring Shop today and tell him that Blake sent you. Please. I also need to tell you about Stringjoy. Stringjoy custom guitar strings out of Nashville, Tennessee. Scott and I, we've been, working together on various projects over the years. Like we've been working together a long time. And through that, he's really educated me about a lot of different things about strings. I had no idea there was so much to know. In fact, I'm actually testing some prototype experimental things out right now, which I mean, the level of detail that goes into this is crazy. Sometimes down to the thousandth of an inch just makes the bendiness of a string, or lack thereof, so much different. And the amount of wraps that go on to the heavier strings, I didn't even know. This is how dumb I am. I didn't even know that like most bass strings were compound wound. Like they have multiple wraps around the same core wire to create a bass string or some of the really heavy guitar strings. I didn't know. I thought it was all just one thing because I'm not that smart. But Scott knows what's up. You go to stringjoy.com, you can get awesome custom strings, exactly what you need for your exact guitar, made to your exact specs. And if you don't know what you need, they're more than willing to help out and talk you through your tunings and your scale length and what your preferred kind of feel is. That's their whole deal, is customization and just making everybody happy. So go to stringjoy.com and check them out. And also, if you're going to be in Nashville for Summer NAMM, they're having a party or shindig or some sort of get-together after the show on Thursday. I don't know all the details, but I do know it's at the Stringjoy shop, and I'll be talking about it because I'm definitely going to be there. So if you're going to be in Nashville, we should meet up there and hang out. It's a great time. Okay, I think that's it for the house cleaning this week. I was able to keep it a little more condensed. That's kind of how I like it. And my guest this week is Andy Weber from Whalehazard Guitars. He makes some really beautiful instruments. I've gotten the chance to play one at Co Schneider's one day event that was here in Portland here. I don't know, maybe last summer? I can't remember exactly when it was. But yeah, I got the chance to go check out some of his work, and it's really, really nice, and I've been following him on Instagram and all that stuff. So go check out Whalehazard Guitars, but first, enjoy this conversation with Andy. He makes wonderful stuff, and he's a great guy to talk to. All right, into it. Woo! Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Andy Weber from Whalehazard Guitars. What's happening, man?
Hey, Blake. Not much. How are you doing today?
Oh, we're just hanging in there, doing the thing like always.
You said you're wrangling children this morning.
I was doing a little children wrangling. There was a little toddler juggling, as I like to call it, but we got through it, so we're doing all right.
Cool.
The real problem was the guy with his massive subwoofers that wanted to pull up right behind my shed out here, and he was just partying this morning. He just really wanted to have a good time and let everybody be involved.
Sure. What was he listening to?
I don't know. All I could hear was
right.
That's all I heard. So I'm not entirely sure what it was.
Sure. The idea is that if your woofers are good enough, then it doesn't matter what you're listening to, right?
I think that's the theory.
Yeah.
I have it fairly quiet out here, but what a lot of people, well, nobody would know because they can't see it, but it's right next to a parking lot. So I've got like a big hedge in between, and so it doesn't feel like it's in the middle of town, but you go right on the other side of the hedge and there's a parking lot there. And I get all kinds of interesting people pulling up literally behind my house and, saying and doing very strange things because they don't realize that there's a house right on the other side of where they're at. They think they're like being sneaky or something. I don't know.
Right. Well, I'm sitting at my desk here with the window open, and it's possible there might be some airplanes going overhead, or, there's sound carries really well up here too. So sometimes from half a block away, there would be a car crash or something on this busy street. And it's certainly possible a cat might jump up here and yell into the microphone at some point. So
good. That makes for good podcasting.
Don't be surprised. Yeah.
So where is up here, by the way? I'm not even sure exactly where up here is.
Well, I meant upstairs, but in Minneapolis, Minnesota. So, I'm kind of right in the heart of South Minneapolis here. Nice.
Yeah,
I like it quite a lot.
Well, let's just get into it then. What's your story, Andy? How did you get in? Nobody just jumps in one day and is like, you know what? I'm a guitar builder. I'm a luthier. You got started somewhere. What's your story?
Yeah, well, I feel most days I feel like I'm still starting. Every day I have to kind of start over, and be like, all right, figure out today, how do I do this? But I don't know. It's I kind of came to guitar late. I didn't really play guitar until I was probably a junior in high school. Started to learn. But I always, did musical stuff. My parents made me take piano lessons when I was really little. And I couldn't wait to be done with that. So then I joined the school band and played trumpet all the way through high school. And now as an adult, I really wish that I had either stuck with the piano, which is a useful instrument, or done something, I don't know. I've done something other than play trumpet all those years, because I learned a lot about music, but I don't care about playing trumpet anymore, and I probably never will again. So, I don't know, but I've always been into, the sound of an electric guitar has always been something that's been pretty intriguing to me. It's when I was a kid, my dad listened to a lot of Zeppelin, Dire Straits, that kind of stuff. The Beach Boys, I guess. I don't know. It's just kind of an evolution of that. And I grew up in a pretty small town in Northeast Iowa. It wasn't until I got to college that I realized that you could just just be in a band, and you didn't have to know what you're doing or have good gear or anything. Like you just you can just do it. And that was a revelation to me. And so yeah, like I said, I started playing learning acoustic guitar in high school, and then I bought my first electric in college. Just a Squire Strat, came with the amp in the box. I still have that guitar. I love the neck on it. The hardware is junk, and the pickups have been swapped out a million times. Yeah, and I kind of
What is it?
I also what's that?
What is it? Sorry, what kind of guitar
Oh,
was
it's
it?
a Squire Strat.
Squire Strat. Okay, sorry.
Yeah. The 100 that comes in a box with an amp for $150.
Exactly. I know the type.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't know. I always kind of was into tinkering around with things and taking things apart, and maybe sometimes putting them back together successfully. So that that first guitar, I took it apart and put it back together a million times, and I also studied sculpture in college. So and my dad also used to be a cabinet maker and now builds timber frame homes. So I knew a lot of woodworking. Just kind of all of those things came together, and I was like, well, I feel like at some point I realized that probably when, looking at forums and things on the internet, that's like, oh, you can just build a guitar out of wood. Like these pieces are all wood and there's some stuff bolted to it. And like, I know enough woodworking. I could do that. So, I thought I'd give it a try. And for a long time, I didn't have the space to do it or tools. So I tinkered around with electronic stuff, and I built a few, clone pedals here and there. And I had no idea what I was doing with electronics back then either. Some of them worked, some of them didn't. Yeah, I don't know. And then I built a guitar. It was kind of terrible and really ugly. So I decided to build some more, and I don't know. They keep getting better. People seem to like them. Yeah, I don't know.
They have a really unique look to them, and I found that can be really difficult. At least, I mean, you can make a unique guitar. That's not the hard part. Like it's pretty easy to come up with a shape that's not really been done before. As we can see when we walk around NAMM, it's relatively simple to come up with a new shape. To come up with a new shape that is as aesthetically pleasing as what you've came up with, and it like still looks like a guitar, but also not really like anything we've seen, but kind of. That's where the magic is. Like, how do you approach that process?
So you're probably mostly talking about the Andromeda, right? That's the kind of my flagship shape. That one, it's so as I was saying, the first one I built was a pretty ugly thing. It looked like if BC Rich designed something for Batman sort of deal. Real heavy and clunky. And I built a few one-off things for some friends here and there. And kind of working on honing that sort of design. But it wasn't until I came up with the Andromeda that I had kind of decided that I wanted to do something that's more kind of a production thing. That's like, okay, this is going to be the platform. This is going to be the shape and the geometry of it. And I can kind of, being a one-man shop, I can kind of do infinite variations on that. With colors and inlay schemes and wood and things like that. So, yeah, I don't know. My designs aren't that out there, like you're saying. They still look like guitars, and they're certainly inspired by vintage instruments. And I guess I kind of have a sort of a visual vocabulary of lines and shapes that I've been drawing and making. I studied art in college. Did a lot of sculpture, but also some, painting and drawing, and the same sort of shapes keep coming up. The same sort of like line quality, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does.
And so I find that stuff keeps reappearing in my work. And as I'm designing a guitar, I start with a center line and, the scale length. And these are the these are the mechanical things that need to line up right, and then can kind of go from there and do whatever I want with it. And the Andromeda shape certainly is inspired some by a Gibson SG. Kind of, it's got a really long neck, and the way where the neck joins the body, so you can get all the way up to the 24th fret. Likewise, the symmetrical bevels on the front and back is a little bit inspired by that. Shape wise, it doesn't look anything like that, but
I was gonna
those
say
are some,
I never would have pulled that out of it just looking at it.
sure. But
And I'll be posting these on Instagram and all that stuff for anybody that is curious. They can probably pull this up on the Tone Mob Instagram and see exactly what we're talking about right now. Not if you're driving. Don't do it if you're driving.
Don't do that. No.
But it's really, I'm looking at it right now and I'm going, wow. Yeah, an SG is never what I would have pulled out of that if you had asked me. But now that you've mentioned it, I can totally see it in exactly the details you're talking about there. That's really cool.
Yeah, but again, it's not the shape of it so much as it is those kind of like those contours, and just kind of the geometry of it. But yeah, I'm always inspired by kind of retro sci-fi art. That sort of thing is really interesting to me. Also, kind of Art Deco, Art Nouveau sort of things. I'm always thinking about design, and that's a way that I, as a builder that nobody's heard of, can get my stuff to get a little attention on my stuff, because it's at this point too. You're talking about designing an interesting shape is easy, but it's I'm at a point where I feel like designing a guitar that plays and sounds great is, I've done it enough that I can do that consistently, and I feel really good about my instruments. So what can I do then to take the next step to make them something that's going to jump off the shelf or off the rack and make people want to play them? And so hopefully my unique design sense can help me out there.
You were talking about some of your inspirations there, and I'm not really sure if there's an easy way to segue into this, but I'm sure you get this question all the time, and it was one of the number one things I wanted to ask you, which is the name Whalehazard.
Yeah.
Is that something that I should immediately understand, or is that there's something there that I'm just missing? Where did that come from?
No, there's nothing to understand, and it's never as good a story as people might think it's going to be. I don't know. I don't think I was even looking for a brand name yet at this point. So I don't know the timeline of it, but someone had posted probably on Facebook like a pirate name generator, and the name was Nathaniel Whalehazard. 2 Z's, no. I believe.
That is
so
not.
It's not interesting.
That is not at all what I was expecting. I was like prepared for this, like, well, there's this obscure character in Dune that, like, that's what I was.
That would be way better.
That's what I was prepping for. But hey, pirate name generator is just as valid of a way as anything.
Well, so for somebody who grew up in Northeast Iowa, I've always been pretty fascinated by maritime history. My dad's always loved boats, and he got me into that stuff when I was a little kid, and so and specifically the period of time when, like the New England, like whaling business, is a really interesting and unique, like, historical period that has nothing like that has ever quite happened before. Guys going out and risking their lives for years at a time just to try and kill whales for oil, and like that's crazy. So I've read a bunch of books about it, and it's always fascinating to me. And so the combination of the words whale and hazard were really interesting to me. And then at one point I was probably just doodling and came up with the logo, and I was like, well, that makes for a pretty sweet logo, so that's kind of, and I still kind of struggle with it. Would I be better off having my name on these, or, I don't know, but that's where I'm at right now.
I don't think so, actually. If I was just to put the marketing hat on for a second, I think that's part of what makes, they're unique instruments. They have a unique look to them. Everything about them is pretty unique, including the name. And I feel like, when our mutual friend Co, who's been on the podcast before,
Mhm.
introduced us. That's why, like, that's something that stuck. I had played one of your guitars at one of his shows, and that's the one that I remembered the most. A, because it was my favorite, and B, because the name just stuck in my head. I'm like, Whalehazard. I'm not gonna forget that. So I don't think I think if you switched it and put Weber on there, it wouldn't have
Mhm.
quite the punch. Weber's a nice name, but it's not
Yeah, it's fine.
it's not punchy.
It's yeah, it's boring. It's
It's not any, it's like if I put Wyland on there, I would say the same thing. Like Whale Hazard's probably better choice. I think it's cool, and
sure,
it fits the vibe too in an
sure.
interesting way that I don't think people would expect if they haven't been exposed to them before.
Right. Yeah, well, I look at other guitar brands, and often it is just somebody's last name, or else it's something that has to do with, some weird pun or play on words that has to do with music or gear, or and a lot of those all blend together for me too, unless it's a well-known brand that's somebody's last name. But even those, that's just somebody's name. So I don't know. That's what I've got. I'll stick with it for now, especially it's starting to get a little bit of attention. So, and
I
yeah, like
think
I said, I enjoy the logo, and it makes for cool inlay on the headstock.
Let's talk about the inlays a little bit. I was going to go somewhere else, but I do want to talk about the inlays. I physically understand how an inlay works and how somebody would physically do it. I get it. But like the amount of skill that you guys have, that you're able to do these intricate inlays, blows me away. Cuz not only do you have to be really good with design and really good with, the art itself to make a good inlay pop and make it work on an instrument, but then there's the actual physical part of doing it. Like, how did you develop those skills? And did it come naturally, or is it easier than I'm thinking? Like, can you just talk about what goes into doing an inlay job like that?
Sure. Well, it's not easy. It's a pain in the ass every time. But it's for me, it it's a set of skills that works well with the way my brain operates. I'm I'm I often have trouble focusing on things, but a task like that involves sitting down and really, intense level of concentration and detail work. Um, if I can get into that, that's something I can do all day without, thinking about it, or being distracted easily. But I learned to do it just by doing it. Um, there's a couple of books by Larry Robinson, that I read several times, and thought, well, I'll give it a try. That was one of the things early on that attracted me to building guitars. Was looking at inlays and, thinking about doing it, and being like, just the kind of the juxtaposition of either shell or metal or something like that, with wood, and in particular exotic wood. Like a white mother of pearl on rosewood is super simple, but it always looks good.
Oh yeah, every time.
So just aesthetically, that's something that draws me in. And that kind of it's an interesting combination of textures as well. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of always was fascinated by it, and again, it was one of those things where it's like, well, I bet I could do that. And I did it poorly a lot, and still do from time to time. But I've done it enough that I've, you know, certainly started to develop a reputation for it. And it's interesting because the design process of it is hard. That's really difficult. It's easy for me to sit down and cut out pieces of shell and then route out the fretboard. Um, but getting I do a lot of, I have a couple of designs that I've repeated, but for the most part, especially when I'm doing a commission, everybody's getting a custom inlay, um, and trying to do something that's unique and interesting. It is a difficult thing to do, and people come to me with ideas like, I want this crazy thing, and I want this to do this all, kind of. I can't think of any good examples right now, but some really weird and wild ideas where my challenge is then to figure out how to kind of make that work, make their idea work with my design sense and my aesthetic. Because it's certainly easy to do too much inlay, to get over, just make it can get gaudy really fast. And so
Right.
it's yeah, trying to find that balance of 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 interesting, cool, ornate design and still have a classy, because I think of the whole guitar as one composition, so it's like the colors on the headstock need to match with what's going on the fretboard and the body, and I think about the plastics need to work together and all of that stuff. So in general, I try to, with inlays, I usually end up sticking with maybe 2 or 3 colors, to try and keep it all cohesive. And there's a guitar I built for the Vancouver International Guitar Festival last summer. The semi-hollow Andromeda. I'm sure you've seen. That's got a Claro walnut top, and it's got all sorts of blue and white inlay
Oh,
on the
yes.
body as well.
I have seen it.
Yeah, so that one, that's got a lot going on, but it's try to keep the individual bits of it fairly simple, and it's
Mhm.
real complicated. There's inlay going through the F hole on that, and that crosses over the binding. I inlaid on the pickguard, and it continues onto the body, all that kind of stuff. So really complicated, just kind of technical details, but the design itself is not super overwhelming or in your face. And again, that one's got just a handful of colors. It's basically the walnut top. There's the blue and white inlays, and then the back of the guitar is kind of that same sort of like sonic blue color.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a very stunning instrument, to be honest. It looks really. I've seen that guitar a few times on the interwebs, and
Mhm.
it just really pops. I dig it quite a bit.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, that one sounds great too. So, and it's also for sale. Am I allowed to say that?
No, I'm cutting that
Oh,
out. You can't say
okay.
that. Don't use. How dare you? How dare you?
Yeah. So,
That's it.
yeah, but
This podcast is over. How
we're
dare you?
over. Okay,
Yeah,
that's
we're
fine.
done.
I'm gonna go
Yeah.
turn my subs back on.
Yeah. That was you.
Yeah, I'm parked behind your house.
Not creepy at all.
No. Um. So yeah, I don't know what we're talking about inlay.
Oh yeah, I
Yeah,
do.
I
I
don't know.
want to know
Like,
something. Here's.
sure.
I'm sure I'm not the only one who wants to know this. We've got all sorts of different kinds of people that listen to the show, but I know for a fact a few of them are luthiers. Do you mind
Mhm.
sharing any tips, tricks, or things you've learned along the way, specifically about the physical process of doing inlay work? Anything you've like ran into, like, hey, don't use this kind of glue because it shrinks the. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of an example, but I'm not doing a very good job. I think you know what I'm saying.
Sure. Well, the number one thing I would say is by Larry Robinson's book. I believe The Art of Inlay is the one. I believe that's the one. It's great. Um, I just found a new brand of jeweler's saw blades that I really like. That I don't have any idea off the top of my head what brand it is. I could text you later if you want
Oh,
to
that's
post that.
cool. That's okay.
Boy, so yeah, I don't know. Well, so the other talking about the design process of it, the difficult part is I love to draw and I've always drawn a lot, but I'm not a great drafts person. So getting my ideas to a refined design. So, you're working with a jeweler's saw blade that's, less than a tenth of an inch um,
Wow.
wide for sure. And it's, so in order to get a clean, accurate cut, you need to have the lines of your design need to be as clean and tight as possible. So for me, that process involves, and Larry Robinson talks about it in his book, that just refining your lines over and over and over again until you have a really tight, clean, hard line is going to give you the best results with the least gaps. Um, yeah, and trying to think other things technically. I don't know. Don't be afraid to change your blade all the time.
Okay.
One thing. Um, Yeah, you always want a sharp blade, especially cutting pearl can be a little tricky. Yeah, I don't know. One thing I would say is if you think it's not perfect, you'll find that most people are never going to see it from any closer than a couple of feet away. So those gaps kind of, disappear. But if you're not happy with it, do it again. I've done that lots of times too. It's just kind of, that's certainly something about building guitars in general. It's, if I've done lots of things that weren't up to my standards and had to redo them. I do everything the slow way. Started to build a reputation for attention to detail, and I'm still looking at things that I do now and be like, well, that's not perfect. I better throw this whole thing away. And I do that every day. But I've come to realize that nobody's looking at the things I'm looking at.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting because I feel like as someone who appreciates a really nice, well-made instrument, but I'm not a builder. I feel like I would be looking for the same things that you would be looking for, but do you find that's not the case? Like you just have a different eye for things, or is that the kind of the luthier mindset in general, or why do you think that that people miss it?
I think it certainly is a luthier mindset in general, but I've also come to realize that I maybe am a little too focused on that sort of stuff sometimes. I used to do construction with my dad, like in college and stuff, and there'd be things I'd be like, well, that's, that 2x4 is a little crooked. And he's like, that's going to be inside the wall. No one's ever going to see it. But like, I can just kind of eyeball stuff like that sometimes. And then I worked some full, some part-time at a printing press for 10 years, like a photo lab printing press. And, I was looking for really tiny, minuscule printing flaws and things like that. I'm sure that has added to my attention
OCD?
To detail. And
yeah,
yes, that's a better word for it, probably. But yeah, and I've talked to a few people about it. Like I started doing this on my own. I don't have any real training. I didn't apprentice with anybody. So I don't get to see very many boutique guitars here. Like, certainly not like, super high end ones. There are a few people around town doing it and doing some really good stuff, but the big name legendary people, the big stuff, I didn't really grow up even seeing that. So I kind of started doing it thinking everything needed to be absolutely perfect, and if it's not perfect, then it's not good enough. But I've come to see, having been to a few shows now, that it's like, oh yeah, well, I guess my finish work holds up with all of this other stuff. And, I've gotten good feedback from other builders about that too. And, I wouldn't say that my finish work is phenomenal, but I've had a lot of people tell me that I'm really good at it. And so that I don't know what they're looking at, but
Andy, let me tell you, you're really good at it.
Yeah.
Okay. Just take the compliment and just know that you're really good at it.
Well, so I've so that's certainly been a confidence booster. It took me, a long time of several years of refinishing things over and over and over again until I was even comfortable enough taking them to like a local store to try and sell them. But now I've gotten some stuff out there, and sending that one to Co for the one day show. You played the green one, right? Green Andromeda?
Yep.
Cool. Yeah. So, I sent that one there and I got a lot of really good feedback on that. I got to do the Luthierist podcast as a result of that, because Paul saw it and Jason Rogers saw it and they, wanted to talk about it. And I was like, well, if those guys think my finish work is good, then, that definitely makes me feel a lot better.
Knowing I haven't got to talk to him for a little while, but knowing Paul the way I do, if Roni says that your finish work's good, your finish work's good. Trust me.
Sure. Well,
he's
a
very OCD individual as well. So if he's stamping approval on it, then you should feel good about that. In my opinion, because he made the guitar that I play probably more than any of my other guitars, my Oceanic.
Sure, yeah, I've seen that one. It's sweet. Yeah, so I've never played one. I'd love to someday, but yeah. Well, so like I said, I went to the last summer and did the Vancouver International Guitar Festival, and that was my first like big real guitar show, and I was, I was really freaked out about it and really nervous. Just logistically, it was a nightmare getting stuff to Canada and all that. But then it was like, there's going to be people there selling $10,000 acoustic guitars, and I gotta, my stuff going to hold up in this sort of setting, and I felt really good being there and being like, oh yeah, I'm seeing, I can walk by everybody else's table and see finish flaws, or I won't name any names, but just like, I'm like, okay. And I got a lot of really good feedback from other builders who whose work I really like. So that, I'm feeling good about the product I'm putting out at this point. I still would love to not have to paint my own guitars, because it takes me way too long. I could build twice as many of them if I could afford to outsource that.
With the way that you're wired, do you think you would ever be happy with someone else doing it, though?
Yeah, I've thought about that too, and especially now that I've built a reputation for really good finish work, it's like, oh man. But I don't like it. I love mixing colors and spraying a burst and that kind of stuff, but it's, yeah, I don't know. I'm using a water-based finish, which I've tried a lot of different products, and a lot of them are not up to par. But I've found a product that I really like, and my process is getting me results that I'm happy with. So, part of progressing doing this, and um, having done it enough that I can at least know which things are, what flaws are acceptable, which things nobody's going to see. I know how to finish something, complete something rather. But need to build a real spray booth. I work from home. I have a weird kind of root cellar room off of my laundry room that has some not very adequate fans venting out some ducts. It catches most of the overspray. It's not great. There's the heat is not good in there in the wintertime. So at some point I can convince my wife to let me knock a hole in the wall and put a big exhaust fan in.
And a heater.
Having a better, yeah, that too. So having a better spray booth would help me. Because as it is, I'm only able to do one guitar at a time, so I'd be better off being able to batch things and spray clear all day on a handful of guitars, kind of shuffle things around.
Yeah, because almost anything, when you get into any sort of production work of any kind, it's like it seems to be the setup that kills you. It's like all the prep work to do the thing that you need to do is actually where like most of the time goes, it seems. So being able to set up and knock out,
sure.
A whole bunch at the same time is where you end up being able to save yourself some time and, cost and all that stuff too. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. They're like, why does a one-off custom guitar cost more than, this guitar? It's like, well, a lot of it at the end of the day is simply time. It takes so much time to do what you do. I know I'm preaching to the choir here.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, I'm doing a lot of things the slow way, the more complicated way, partly for aesthetic things, so all my guitars are set neck. I do a scarf joint headstock, and there's a, head plate, and there's a bent back veneer, on the volute back strap, if you will. So all of that stuff takes a lot longer than, making a bolt-on neck with a, that's a one chunk of maple, with a fretboard. And, I can certainly appreciate that aesthetic as well, and the simplicity of it. Like I love a Strat, but that's not the kind of guitar that I want to build. I mean, even if it were a unique shape, maybe at some point I'll thought about doing a bolt-on model of something, just kind of to mix it up. I don't know what that would be, but
so
yeah. Sorry, good.
I just wanted to dive back real quick to you were talking about the Vancouver Guitar Show, and we talked
Oh, yeah.
about a couple of builders that Paul and I'm sorry, I forgot the guy his name who wrote your book that you suggested. That just
Larry Robinson.
Yeah,
So
Larry
he
Robinson.
he pretty much just does inlay stuff. He's kind of the go-to guy for that.
Gotcha. He's not just doing guitars then. He's just inlay master, basically.
Yeah, pretty much at this point, I think. Yeah,
Where I was going
I don't know.
where I was going with that question is you mentioned that there were some other builders that you'd been looking up to that you were like, oh, good, my stuff is right there with theirs. Who can you mention some of the ones you've looked up to or inspired you over the years?
Well, so specifically at the Vancouver show, some people that I met that I like their work a lot. Matt Proctor from M-Tone Guitars.
Mm-hmm.
They're in You're in Portland, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so he's in Portland, and his stuff is just amazing. Each one is really unique, sculptural, just really cool. Everything's a little different, and I love everything he does. And I was talking to him a lot about sculpture too, and kind of I appreciate the immediacy of what he's doing with guitars, if that makes sense. Because he's taken a body that's, maybe he's got this shape that the body shape maybe is the same, but he's carving something different on each one, and he's making custom one-off, like, hammered kind of cast metal pieces, and, putting heat treatment on those things and all sorts of that kind of stuff. I think is really cool, and it's something that I miss about doing that kind of sculpture, as opposed to the guitars I'm building. By the time the guitar's done, I haven't done anything artistic on it in a long time, so it goes back to how much time it takes me to paint something and cure it and sand it and buff it, assemble it. And like with inlay work too, I love sitting down and starting a new sketch and making making messy lines all over the place. But then by the time I get around to actually cutting those pieces out and gluing them in, it takes there's no immediacy left to that. I feel like the artistic part is done, and now I'm just simply executing something. Anyway, that's a tangent. So I really like M-Tone guitars. That's something particularly for that reason, but I love his designs too. Let's see. Megan Wells was at the show, and she's building, real top of the line arch tops.
Her stuff's beautiful.
Absolutely amazing.
Yes.
Really like heavily shaded, like spruce tops, which I think is really cool. The stuff she's doing with color, I think, is great. I'm kind of obsessed with arch tops at the moment, and that's something I would really want to get into. Because that's kind of like now I've built solid body electric guitars. I've got a flat top that I've started that's very much on the back burner. But even getting halfway through that, I'm kind of like, I want to build an arch top, just because there's some design elements to that I think you can visually. I think they're pretty stunning instruments in general. But anyway, Megan's are a really nice, beautiful instrument. So I've always really liked her work. And then Yanizello stringed instruments, I think.
That one I'm not familiar with.
It's from Toronto, I believe. I might get this wrong. But really nice. A lot of like mandolins and some lap steels and things, but they're really, really bright, colorful, like kind of, and he pays really nice attention to detail too, kind of just like thinking about all of the plastic parts, and he's making some of his own hardware, and just really nicely. So aesthetically more in line with the kind of things that I want to build, where it's just really nice and polished, and every single aspect of it is, is a cohesive, really nice design, and,
flows together and all that.
Like, yeah, and real nice, perfect, flat, glossy finishes, and yeah. So those were some of the things that I like the most. I'm trying to think about other builders. Like I said, I've always liked Paul Roney's stuff. I think his designs are really nice. What else? I'm not I'd been listening to some of your previous podcasts to just prepare myself. And I've never really been that much of a gear guy, so it's not like until I started doing this, I wasn't even that aware of a lot of the boutique builders, and even now, like I said, just it's I'm not exposed to it that much, except on Instagram or whatever. Which I've only had a smartphone for just over 3 years, I think. So I'm a little
Oh
behind
wow.
on all of it.
Okay.
I got
I'll
one
pump the brakes.
so that I could get on Instagram. Oh, sorry.
Oh, yeah, no, okay. Well, no, I want to. We need to. We need to talk about that a little bit. You've only
Oh,
had
do
a smartphone for 3 years.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's interesting. So you were a flip phone guy up until 3 years ago,
Oh, sure.
right?
Yeah.
And you only got it for Instagram.
Pretty much. Yeah. Um, there's all sorts of things that it's very useful for, and I wouldn't know what to do without it at this point. Although maybe I'd get more work done. But yeah, no, I got it because I was like, well, I know this is important for promoting my business, and also I think I wanted a better, just the option of being able to take pictures with it and post those, and have, I think, also have them go like directly to my Facebook page and stuff like that. Whereas before, it's like I got to dig out the digital SLR, plug a memory card into my laptop, and so I was still doing that all the time.
Gotcha.
Just to
And
post
instead, you can just
picture on
pull this out
Facebook.
of your pocket and go, there it is. Click.
Yeah.
What
So
the,
I'm just trying to.
I
Sorry,
do
what?
want to ask you, why did you resist for so long? I mean, there's a million reasons to not get a smartphone, and I actually, since I'm like, I run everything from my phone basically.
Yeah.
It's like it's kind of unfathomable for me to be able to imagine not having one. But I also the real human side of me sees like all the problems that they create as well. So
Oh, for sure.
why did you resist getting one for so long?
Well, part of it is that it just seemed like, I don't know. I certainly was aware back then of people just being distracted by their phone, even as much as I am now all the time. So I know that's an issue, but a lot of it is probably money. Part of it is I just get kind of I can be good with technology when I need to be, but I tend to resist it because it's not. I don't know. It's not how I want to spend my brain capacity. I've got better things to think about most of the time. I don't know, probably a lot of it was money. And I didn't really have much of a need for one yet, I think,
Uh-huh.
at that point. I think we were probably still, my band was probably still going on tour and printing off Google directions, you know. I remember the first time we went on the road after I had a smartphone, and I was like, oh, this makes life way easier. But
That's so crazy that it was that recent, to me, because to most people, like, they were deep into smartphones by 3 years ago, right? Like,
oh, sure.
even my dad,
Well,
I think, had an iPhone at that point, and he is as anti-technology as it gets, basically.
Yeah, I think my dad got one before I did. But it's well, and my wife works. She does web design and UI design and that kind of stuff. Or she did then, and so she's always has to have the latest iPhone for work, just to keep up with stuff. And I don't know. So I guess it was, if I needed direction somewhere, I could use her phone for that, or if I needed. Even now, there's not a ton of stuff that I need a smartphone for.
Just listening to the Tone Mob podcast, that's all you need one for. It's the only reason to
I
get
still
one.
have I still have an iPod for that.
Oh man, I remember those days. Like
Yeah.
plugging into iTunes to download it for the day. I haven't done that in years.
Yeah. Well, so yeah, I listen to podcasts all day because I'm working in the shop. And so, yeah, I still do that. I would have switched, but I have the newest edition iPod Nano or whatever that they haven't made now for several years also, but I've got that one because it had an FM receiver so I could listen to baseball on the radio.
Oh, okay. I
It's
gotcha.
one of the reasons I'm still using that. So here's even less high tech. They switched. Nobody cares about this.
Yes, they do.
But
Yes, they do. I care.
last season, the Twins radio broadcast switched back to the AM station. So I bought a $20 little made in China little rechargeable radio that has an AM. So I'm carrying that around too, because it's also for some reason the MLB app didn't work on my phone. I was like, okay, I guess I got to do this, the old way. Listen to this on an AM radio.
I was
So
going to
that's
say,
kind of how
surely there's an
I
app
am with
for that by
technology.
now, but apparently there is, but it's not working. I was going to go.
Yeah, it didn't. I think it does now, but I already bought this little radio, so it's like, well, that's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Does the
Hey, if
job.
it works.
Yeah.
I can't remember the last. So I've said this one before. I can't remember the last time I've purposely turned on the radio to listen to something. It's been
That's the
on.
only time I do, pretty much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's been on when I've gotten the car or whatever, but it's not like I'm immediately like, okay, I got to plug my phone in so I can listen to what I want before I'm forced to hear another Mattress World commercial.
Yeah. I can understand that.
But it's interesting to me just the way different people approach technology and how it impacts their life, honestly, because like technology is like becomes so integrated. I almost feel like a cyborg at times. I'm just
sure.
I got like wireless headphones on, and there's somebody's calling and it's like in my skull, instead of answering. It's a weird thing. And I've actually heard some people argue that smartphones essentially are sort of making us cyborgs, and then eventually that we will have them almost implanted in a way, like maybe not actually implanted, but like it'll just be normal for everyone to walk around with a one earbud in or something. Whereas in 5-6 years ago, my boss, why did I say it like that? I turned into Mike Tyson for a second. My boss was wearing one of those Jawbone things like 8 years ago, and everyone was making fun of him for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like everyone was like, why is he walking around with that thing in his ear? Like, we don't know if he's talking to us. We don't know if he's talking to somebody on his phone. Granted, he was a weird person, but like, now it's not that weird to see somebody walking around with like one AirPod in or one Bluetooth. Like, that's just kind of normal. Back then, people were weird for that.
Yeah, well, it's usually me. Like I said, I'm walking around listening to podcasts all day. And I've got an earbud in. I don't have the fancy wireless ones, but
I will say I don't have AirPods. I have like these Skull Candy over the ear things, and I was resistant to the wireless for a long time because sound quality and latency and all that stuff. But if you're just listening to podcasts on it, the wireless is like really nice, because I'm not like I found myself always just I was like building things. It was like building a fort for my son last summer, and I am the type of person that when I have something to do like that, I get way more done if I have a podcast or something like that to listen to the whole time. It will keep me focused rather than me getting distracted and wandering over and playing with fuzz pedals or something.
Right.
But that was the first time I'd actually worked with wireless headphones on, and I would say for what you're doing, I highly recommend it. It's more freeing than you might suspect. Like I love mine way more than I thought I would. I spent like $100 on them, and I'm like, these are worth like $300. Like, these are awesome. So I recommend it if you feel like splurging.
Sure. Well, there's probably guitar tools or parts that I would spend that money on instead. So I usually buy just the cheapo earbuds and then they die after 2 months. But so maybe it would be better off getting the $100 ones that last a while.
After you've ripped them out of your ears.
Maybe someday.
Like reaching for a brush or something and just yank them out of your ears. I don't know. I was ripping mine out all the time. They'd catch on something, just all of a sudden violently get ripped out of my ears. But anyway, Bluetooth headphones changed my life. That's all I know.
Okay. Good to know.
Put it on a t-shirt.
Yeah.
So we're getting kind of close to the last little bit of the show here. And I still had a few questions I wanted to ask you. But right now, I was just curious if you want to plug anything. I know you already plugged your guitar for sale, but I guess we'll leave that in. But where can people
Sure.
find you? What
Yeah.
do you want to tell people? This is your chance to tell people stuff.
Well, I'm Whalehazard on Instagram and Facebook. If anybody still uses Facebook, it seems like it's pointless at this point, right? It's just for influencing elections and whatnot.
I mean, we have a lot of fun in the Tone Mob Facebook group, but I don't know what the rest
I
of
should
it looks like.
sure. I should join that. Yeah, I don't know. Follow me on Instagram. I got a website, whalehazard.com. I think it's got fairly up to date pictures on there. Instagram's where all the stuff in progress is going to be. I do need to do some updating on my website with just kind of new specs and things that I've kind of adjusted a few things on my guitars. But people can always email me. This is a pretty small business. I've only been doing it full time for just over 2 years. I'm actively trying to find dealers, and I'm certainly have open spots for orders if anybody wants to commission something. Give me a call. There's no dumb questions. I will inlay whatever you want within reason.
Be careful.
Yeah, I don't know.
Be careful with saying
well,
like that. Oh boy.
I've had a lot of people, inquire about doing inlay on existing guitars, and I was like, well, certainly I can do that, but they don't then want to pay to refret the whole thing. Well, I can't do it with the frets on there. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's all I really have to plug is my business. I'm doing let's see, if you're in Minneapolis, there's a Twin Cities drum and guitar show at the end of July at Modest Brewing. That should be a pretty fun one. And then I'm doing the the Great River Guitar Festival in September in Red Wing, Minnesota. That should be pretty big one. Used to be the Twin Cities Acoustic Guitar Festival, but they've moved it and added electric stuff. So looking forward to that. Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to, like I said, build new interesting stuff. I've got a short scale bass design that's hopefully I'll get around to starting this fall. Something I've been working on for a while. Trying to build an instrument that's a little more inclusive. I sent out a survey to a bunch of, to whoever. It's on my website if anybody wants to fill it out. Trying to get some feedback from both smaller players as well as non-male players. Just as far as get some feedback on the marketing of things like that. I was thinking about the Ernie Ball St. Vincent guitar.
Oh man, thing's awesome.
Yeah, it is cool, but I was like, well, I appreciate where this is coming from, but aesthetically it's not really my thing. So, I was trying to talk to a lot of, non-male players in my area to see, what do you want out of a bass, try to build something that's a little not just not something that's not pink and isn't, doesn't have flowers on it just because.
Right.
I volunteer to do a bunch of setup work for an organization called She-Rock here in town that does like young girls rock and roll camps.
Oh, cool.
Which is a really cool thing, and I'm always trying to promote them too and because I think that's really important. And it's the gear community certainly is very male oriented, and that turned even as a white male, I'm not oppressed by anybody, and I'm not, I've got it pretty easy, but it's just something that I, as someone who's building, I just, do what I can to promote kind of inclusivity, certainly in the local music scene. So if there's anybody out there that wants to, give me some feedback on what they'd like to see in a short scale bass, there's a survey on my website. Should be able to find it. I think it's still there.
Sweet.
But yeah, it's weird. Something I've realized in the last, year or so is that the industry that I'm in is I'm building a luxury good, and that's that's a strange place to be. Because
Why is that?
because it's I don't know. The world doesn't need more electric guitars. The world needs like more solar panels, and I don't know. We've got 5 minutes left here to get on a soapbox, but so I've wondered.
We can go long. You say whatever you want to say.
No, I'm not going to get it. I'm not going to get that much into it. I could go forever, but
This is a podcast.
I
That's what
sometimes
it's
wonder if I
forever.
should. Yeah. Sometimes feel like if I could do something, go back to school and learn to do something that would be more useful to the planet. I don't know what. I've thought about that, but for now, the best I can do is try to volunteer some of my time to organizations like that. Try to promote things, but yeah. Anyway,
I think
that's a tangent.
I think you're selling yourself short. I don't think you're quite looking at it the right way. Like everyone's meant to do something, right? Some people are Steve Jobs, and some people are changing the world in that kind of way. I think that I don't think you should sell yourself short that what you're doing isn't important or impactful to the world. I mean, yeah, you're making a luxury good, and at the heart of it, that's what it is. You say the world doesn't need more electric guitars, but what if one of your guitars inspires somebody in just such a way? Maybe that person, writes a song that keeps somebody from shooting themselves in the face. You don't really know. I don't think you should.
No,
I don't think you should say what you're doing isn't important. I think it is.
No, I did. No, I don't. Yeah, I don't think it's unimportant. It certainly is important to me. It's something that keeps me excited on a daily basis. And if that's all it does, that's good too. But yeah, you're right. Maybe, but you know what I mean though. Just kind of the,
I guess like high level. Yeah, from the top level down, does the world need more electric guitars? Probably not. I think we have more than we could ever play, but at the same time, it does. So
sure.
I don't know. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Well,
Obviously,
you need more electric guitars. Is that what you mean?
Well, I need more, yes, because I am a gross American consumer who must just consume and consume and consume. But not everyone's like that.
Sure.
But no, seriously, I don't know. I felt like you were beating yourself up there a little bit, and I was like, no.
Oh,
man,
no. I love what I do. And I want to keep doing it. So, hopefully people will keep buying them so I can keep making them. Cause, like I said, I want to do it. I got lots of fun ideas coming up. No, I was just commenting on, like that's this volunteering is just like a small thing that I can do to kind of give back. And
gotcha. I probably read more into it than what you actually intended.
No, but I just kind of was reflecting on, that's something that I've thought about more recently, that I hadn't before. It's just that this is a luxury good industry, and that's weird, and it's, my guitars are not cheap because they take a really long time to do, and I'm still, even at that price point, not really making any money. But it's a, I do a lot of repair work as well. That's kind of that pays most of the bills for the time being. And the people bringing me repair work are kind of, the local underground punk and metal bands,
right.
And so that's pretty interesting. People, friends of mine who I've known for a long time that, probably will never be able to buy one of my guitars. Or even if they were, maybe that's not something they value enough to spend that kind of money on it, because you can buy a $400 SG and pay me $60 and I will make it play awesome. So, but yeah, the stuff I'm building is, it's a different thing. I want them to be seen as, as artistic works in and of themselves, but they are just tools, they're just guitars. They're even the super fancy ones, they're supposed to be played, they're not, I had somebody ask if I'd build them something to hang on the wall. And I was like, well, I will, but it never went through. Cause I was like, well, not going to say no to that, but the idea is that people are going to play these on stage and they're going to beat them up and they're going to,
They're going to use the instrument for what
I don't know where
what
I'm
it's
going with this. But what's that?
I said they're going to use the instrument for what it's intended for. Like it's supposed to be nice to look at. It's supposed to be aesthetically pleasing. That's like a big part of what you do. And there's a lot of value in that. But also, I agree, you got to play the things. Come on, that's what they're for.
Yeah. And so if anybody's seen my pictures online and said well, that looks really nice, but I can assure you that they I offer a lifetime warranty. They'll stand up to anything. The build quality and playability is just as good as the looks.
Very nice, very nice. All right, well, we got just a couple more minutes here, and this will be an interesting question for you because I don't really know. You mentioned that you're not the biggest gearhead until you got into actually building the things. So I wonder if you'll have what your answer will be on this one. What is your favorite boss pedal?
My favorite what?
Boss pedal.
Favorite boss pedal? Oh. Well, that's pretty easy because I've only, I've certainly played a bunch of boss pedals and I've owned a few. The only one I've ever used regularly and still use is a DD20, the Giga Delay. So the only band I'm currently in right now, which is kind of on hiatus. So I haven't even had a pedal board for a long time. I used to have a giant homemade thing that was way too heavy and clunky and didn't close right. And I was in a weird noise band and I had tons of weird stuff on there. It was all cheap pedals and stuff I built that didn't work right. But so basically my pedal setup at this point, other than a tuner, I just have 3 pedals, and the DD20 is one of them because it's got 4 presets. And I think I've used the same 4 presets for the last 8 years in this band, and I don't think I've touched it at all. But it's like those 4 presets, that's for every song uses one of those presets at some point, probably. And that's my favorite boss pedal, I guess.
The Giga Delay.
Giga Delay.
I have been asking that question more recently. I haven't, and
I was going to say, okay. Because I was going to say, I think the last episode of your podcast I listened to was from like 3 years ago, just yesterday. But so I don't know what questions you're asking now.
Well, you're about to find out. You're about to find out. Right. But no, that one was had been requested. I wasn't
expecting a boss question.
It's a newer question. I think I probably started trying to ask that every time. I don't know, maybe something like 10 episodes ago. So it's a pretty new thing.
Well, I'm glad I had an answer.
Everyone has had an answer, and I really believe, I've said this every time, but whatever. I really believed that this was going to be a little bit of a head scratcher of a question, because for me it is. I have to really think about it, and it kind of changes from time to time. But everybody's been really like, oh, it's this one, and everyone's been different so far. So that's been kind of an interesting insight.
Like I said, fortunately for me, that one of the few pedals that I ever use at all is one. So there you go.
Nice. All right, now here's the big question. This one hasn't changed in a long time, and it's the big one. So, what kind of pizza do you like?
Sure. Okay. Well, I was expecting that one. That's just broadly what kind of pizza? Because I like all kinds.
Very very specifically, what's your favorite kind of pizza?
Well, how specific? Favorite pizza place? Favorite?
Yeah. Go as detailed as you want to make it.
Well, probably the best pizza I've ever had is a place in, where Duluth, Minnesota is, kind of up north on Lake Superior. So right across the harbor from there in Superior, Wisconsin, there's a little brew pub called the Thirsty Pagan. That says it's kind of a half deep dish sort of pan pizza. That's probably my favorite pizza.
And what's all in it?
Well, they put whatever you want on it. I'm not that picky about it. But if I had to pick, generally, if I had to pick one topping for pizza, green olives would have to be the answer.
Okay, wow, I did not see that one coming. Green olives,
But
that's a polarizing topic.
generally, I will eat whatever kind of pizza is put in front of me. It's got to have red sauce, and easy on the seafood. Are my two only like real pizza rules.
Okay, easy on the seafood. I've only really had one seafood pizza. I really liked it, but it tasted like clam chowder, basically, because it was one of those New England style clam pies. I'm like, this basically is like eating clam chowder in solid form.
Yeah, that's not really a pizza, right?
I didn't think so, but it was good. Yeah. It was clam chowder in a.
I don't mind a little bit of chopped up anchovy here and there, but go easy on it, like I said. So.
Yeah, anchovies, I don't hate them, but for me, it's like when people go too heavy on the anchovies, and it doesn't take much, it's like that's all I can taste. It just takes over.
Right.
And so,
well,
I want more.
But I will eat pretty much anything, and pizza is one of my favorite foods. In fact, this afternoon I need to make some dough because my wife and I are making pizza tonight.
Oh, nice. I'm doing the same thing on Sunday for Father's Day.
Hey, so. All right.
Yes.
Cool.
Everything's coming together. It's going to be a great weekend. Well, thanks so much for coming on, man. This was a real treat to talk to you, and your guitars are amazing. Everybody make sure you go check them out and give them a follow and all that good stuff. They're really, really cool instruments, and it was really fun to talk with Andy. So thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Blake.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. For Andy, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. Oh man, that was a great episode, but I must be honest right now. I almost had a freak out just before I recorded what you're hearing right at this moment because I thought I'd lost the whole thing because my computer had a meltdown. But I didn't lose the whole thing. And I wouldn't have lost the conversation because those are saved on a separate server. But I thought I lost all the editing, but I was able to retrieve it. And so now I'm fine. But I did throw my headphones across the room. Just being, in interest of transparency with the audience. But that was a great episode. And I really suggest that you go check out Andy's work. They really, really are beautiful instruments. And they really play and look quite stunning, if I'm being honest. So, yeah, make sure you check all that out. Make sure you check out our sponsors. Make sure you check out Gun Street Wiring Shop and Stringjoy. Please do. And again, if you're going to be in Nashville during Summer NAMM, look me up. Give me a shout and all that stuff. All right. Anyway, I will talk to you next week. And, oh, yeah, as always, there's more of this conversation on Patreon. So if you want to go to patreon.com/tonemob, you can have a fresh new episode featuring more of Andy. So we get into some pretty interesting topics on that one, and I had a lot of fun. So if that's your thing, that's where you go. All right, talk to you next week. Bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too.
If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gunstreet as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gunstreet harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.